can America come back together? So making predictions is always hard, especially when it comes to politics. Back when Biden was going to pick as VP, I thought it was definitely going to be Susan Rice. Republicans were actually already creating ads against her. But, it was hard to believe Biden could have picked anyone else. And then my phone started going off like crazy. And it was Kamala Harris. Biden really, he could have picked anyone, right? Like I left my phone empty just in case I got the call. You never know. Just like I do with the NFL draft every year. There's always a chance the New York Jets could call, and I want to be available. But I was very shocked when Biden picked Kamala Harris. And why didn't I think he'd pick her? It's because of moments like this.
To hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Yeah, that was a pretty hard hit. Kamala Harris destroyed Biden in that debate, and she actually got a big kind of boost from that debate. And yet, Biden still picked her after the big question coming out of there is Biden racist? And, Obama did the same thing for Biden back in 2011.
Is he ready? You said, I think he can be ready, but right now I don't believe he is. The presidency is not something that lends itself to on-the-job training.
I think that I stand by the statement.
Yes, Biden was not able to say that Obama was ready, and then a couple months after that, he became his vice presidential candidate, and then vice president. And so I think it's important to look at that and see that, okay, it is possible, even in politics, to kind of put our differences aside and come together. And that's what we should all be doing as Americans. But it's important to realize what Biden is and what he isn't. He's a moderate. He probably doesn't know, how to log into Twitter. So we'll probably have a lot less chaos there. And is willing to set politics aside to get things done. But realistically, can he bring change to America? A lot of people did vote for Trump because of some of those racist dog whistles. But a majority of the folks, I'd like to think, all voted for Trump because of their own economic interests. They didn't care about racism or injustice. It was all about them. It's all about, how much money is my family making? How are my taxes looking? That was the main points, and it's hard to see if Biden's going to be able to cut through that kind of mentality within the next 4 years. And so, Kelly, I'll pose this question to you. Hopefully you can still hear me. We'll find out here in a second. But will Biden be able to bring the country together in a meaningful way?
Again, I seem to have launched a little bit, but of course that overarching question, where do we go from here? Can we move on from here? Comes down to a lot of things. It's not an easy question to answer. We're looking at a maybe, I think. We're looking at a party on the Republican side that, of course, not every supporter is in favor of white supremacists, but key figures in the party have, accepted that. We've seen Trump retweet white supremacists. We've seen a lot of, if you want to call them militias, sectarian groups, essentially, come together, and a lot of these are really, really fringe movements that have been moved to the front of the party in a lot of ways. And I think it's hard for Democrats to come in and deal with that, especially after the Obama administration, where we saw McConnell's opposition, for 8 years, just, sticking it out, refusing to nominate justices. Even Senator Tom Cotton once refusing to nominate a dying judge because it would pain Obama. I mean, it's hard to come into that on the same footing. I think that people who are calling for reconciliation right now are not doing so in good faith. And I think that's the problem, is that you can't negotiate with bad faith actors and expect to get the same results you would elsewhere.
Exactly.
I think rather than a reconciliation, we're looking more at a reconstruction. I think that Biden is quite possibly the ablest person to take on this task. He has a little bit of the legislative know-how and get-it-doneness that LBJ had. He has the acceptance of progressive ideas like FDR had. So I think he could rise to this challenge. I think he could. Whether he will, whether Republicans will put country before party rather than party before country, as we've seen in quite a few cases, I think to some extent indisputably remains to be seen.
And I think it's a question on both sides there. I mean, I'll be honest, I love politics. I do see myself as a moderate, but I've definitely been pushed more to the liberal side just after the chaos of the Trump years. And I'll be honest, I was looking at the election, and I saw, okay, half the country voted for Trump, half for Biden. I'm looking at these numbers. Okay, half is with Trump. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe Thanos was on to something, when he was talking about just snap my fingers and then we could just, But it's definitely a problem, not just on the Republican side. On the Democrat side, I've seen AOC wants to put together a list of people who worked within the Trump administration to make sure that they never pull into work in politics again. Well, I certainly, I'm not a fan of a lot of those people. It's kind of hard to say, okay, let's move forward as a country while you're also making lists of people that you want to essentially eliminate from the public view.
I'm of two minds on that because I think that AOC is a very smart campaigner. I think that, we were talking about earlier that Republicans wasted millions of dollars coming after her in what is, one of the bluest districts in the country. But I don't think that a bartender beats the third most powerful Democrat in the House of Representatives without a good campaign. I think she has a brilliant political mind. I think she really is putting out there ideas that appeal to people. And while she's still got that very progressive push to her, of course, it doesn't have quite the populist overtones that we've seen from a lot of other politicians right now. So I think people dismissing her ideas out of hand, might be a good idea to listen to her. Again, I'm using Reconstruction as the example. We didn't outlaw, people who had served in the Confederacy from becoming lawmakers, and of course, many of them did. Here in Texas, we have a big debate going on about statues with Confederate veterans, many of whom served in the Confederacy, some to small extent, some to large extent, but then later went on to be legislators. And it's hard to separate that. And so I think that dismissing out of hand the idea of blacklisting some, perhaps not all, of the Trump appointees, I don't know that it's a bad idea.
Yeah, it just makes it seem hard things moving forward. And I did think one of the interesting things when you do look at the electoral map, I was shocked that, Americans voted for Biden. Biden is going to be our next president. When you actually look at the vote in a lot of states where there were moderates, like Martha McSally on the Republican side for Arizona, that actually distanced herself from Trump in the run-up to the election, she lost. And they sent Lindsey Graham back to Congress, and they sent Mitch McConnell back to Congress. And so it seemed like if you distance yourself from Trump, you paid the price. But if you were lockstep with him in a lot of these Republican states, you got rewarded for it. And so it makes it hard to seem that they're going to try to move to a more bipartisan government when the voters just rewarded them for the last 4 years.
Yeah, I think you look at McSally with a larger than Pete Rose sized asterisk. I think, people were joking that she becomes this Jeopardy question of the only senator to lose twice without having ever been elected. I think she was a terrible candidate. I think that, the voters of Arizona rejected her, and they did not like her being reappointed to the second Senate seat after they had just rejected her. And I think that Mark Kelly was an incredible candidate. I mean, you have this guy he has the notoriety not only from having been an astronaut, which is just, as one person said on Twitter, just cool. Don't care who you are. Being an astronaut, it's cool.
It is pretty cool. But then you also have Susan Collins up there in Maine, who's heading back to the Senate as well. And, for any small business owner out there, if you got screwed out of the PPP money, it was because Susan Collins.
Yeah, I think she's a much better example of a moderate winning than McSally. Like, again, I think McSally, bad candidate up against a great candidate, which even Lindsey Graham beat his challenger, who, I think he had a great candidate there.
And they had I think they spent almost over $100 million on that campaign, and still he went back.
Well, again, to be fair, I mean, South Carolina has always been a red state, even during Obama's first run. Didn't turn blue like Virginia and North Carolina. And so I think, Jamie Harrison runs this amazing campaign. Had he not run such a great campaign, he wouldn't have gotten within striking distance of Lindsey Graham, who's never, not once ever, had to really defend his Senate seat. It's been such a Republican district that he's just been able to coast the entire time he's been in the Senate. And he's never really faced a Democrat challenger like that before. I mean, we saw him on Fox News, begging for money, which is shocking for someone with his standing within the party.
Yeah, that was not a good look on his part. He seemed very desperate.
He seemed shaken.
Very shaken. And, I also look at, Mitch McConnell, in Kentucky. And again, a guy who it's interesting to me because, money is not once was in politics. And I've read a lot about his big donors who have kind of left him because he's gone full on for the Trump agenda. And still, he didn't just beat Amy McGrath. He crushed Amy McGrath. And so I just kind of see it as this idea that, okay, now we're all going to come together, kumbaya, when a lot of these Republican senators are getting rewarded for what they've done. It kind of seems like they're going to be disincentivized to work with the Biden administration in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a definite risk of that, but I think with McGrath versus McConnell, you definitely see something like we did against the last challenge against Governor Abbott here in Texas, where you have a Democrat with a lot of buzz, a lot of popularity coming up against them, but maybe it wasn't the time, maybe the ground game wasn't there. Like you said, money isn't everything. Yeah, it can buy you a lot. Sometimes it can even buy you an election, but you got to have the right conditions for that to happen, and I don't think they were there. I think McGrath was always a huge long shot. I think she was a much bigger long shot than MJ Hagar versus Cornyn here in Texas. And I don't think that Hagar really had a shot of taking down Cornyn. But I think that if you follow, Beto O'Rourke's model for turning out the votes, kind of turning that Karl Rove Republican strategy on its head for Democrats of saying, okay, I'm not going to focus on winning over conservative independents. I'm going to focus on turning out base voters, people who aren't voting, who like what I'm saying. I think Beto O'Rourke had a much stronger showing. I think that's why we saw a much stronger showing for Democrats here in Texas. Of course, Texas went for President Trump by a wide margin, but we've never seen it as a battleground in recent years, And for Republicans, I think that's pretty scary. If they lose Texas, there's no real path to the presidency for them. So I think you look at these things of, I think a lot of Republicans may be disincentivized and maybe say what we're doing is working. I think other Republicans, risk losing their elections because we don't see the same kind of fractures in the Republican Party that we do Democrats. Republicans really only voice an opinion about things when they've decided to quit politics.
Yeah, it's true. I know it's been very interesting to watch John Boehner in his post-political life on the board of a medical marijuana company. Definitely did not see that coming. But yeah, it's just, and
I did not have that on my bingo.
What was that?
Did not have that on my bingo card.
No, that was not part of the. Yeah, that was not expected coming from him. But hopefully that has chilled him out a little bit. And yeah, you're right. Back in his time, it was interesting that the Republican Party, and he's talked about that since he's gotten out of office, that the Republican Party kind of cannibalized himself. There was the Freedom Caucus. Yeah. There was the Tea Party kind of wing, and there was a bunch of, kind of groups that just couldn't figure out, they couldn't get on the same page. And really, that's what helped Trump become president. The establishment couldn't get their act together early enough to stop him, which on the Democratic side, they might have kind of shut down the Bernie Sanders campaign just a little bit. Yeah. And got, everyone to kind of jump in on Biden. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I think you look at the standard bearers for the party, and you see the Republicans start off kind of in a middle ground there on moderates versus conservatives. When we're really looking at the hardliners of the party, really just kind of in a way moved right and gobbled up the Freedom Caucus, the Tea Party. Rather than Democrats who seem to be trying to just wait out the progressive wave. So that's interesting to see, what's going to happen with each party.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely the question going further. And another thing that complicates this question of, can Biden bring everyone back together is Trump is going nowhere. Unless he goes to prison. I mean, I don't know if he can tweet from prison, but he is going to be there lock and step to try to throw dirt on anything that the Democrats try doing.
Yeah, I mean, he spent the Obama administration doing that, smearing them on Twitter, and that's what got him the presidency. I don't think we're going to see any change from that again, unless they take away his phone in prison. We talked through that of whether or not that's something we can actually see. I think if I'm the Democrats, I push for it, hoping that he runs as the spoiler candidate. It wouldn't be the first time. Eugene Debs got quite a lot of votes back in the day. It's not somebody who you would know now, and that's because he got votes while in prison on one of his presidential runs. But I think, a lot of the stuff, we need to treat this less as a traditional handover and more as a, kind of the hostile takeover that I think we really are going to see, because I think you're right. I think we are going to see this opposition from McConnell. We are going to see this opposition from Trump once he becomes former president, inside or outside of bars. So I think, we really need to look back to, kind of like, President Grant, used martial law at one point to break the first version of the Klan after the Civil War. He took bold, decisive action on that to shut down white supremacists who were threatening the future of the nation. And I think that if you look at all the problems we have today, and if you're not considering white supremacists to be part of them, I mean, I'm certainly not saying that everyone who votes Republican or everyone who likes Trump is racist or is a white supremacist. That's obviously not the case. But if you're watching this at home and you're thinking, hey, I voted for Trump, you have to acknowledge that you are in the company of quite a few white supremacists. There are, Nazi groups, neo-Nazis, Klan members who openly came out in favor of him. I certainly don't think it helped. He racked together a credible number of terrible endorsements that no one would want there towards the end, from the Taliban and
Stand Back,
Osama
Stand By
bin
didn't
Laden's
seem to help him
niece.
very much either.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of that, helped. I don't think, saying I'm supported by Nazis and the Taliban is really going to do you a lot of good, no matter who you are.
Nope. And I'm just waiting for him to, see if he can track down Biden's birth certificate.
Yeah, out there in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, exactly.
See if it's got.
You just wonder what the next
methyl
crazy
seal on it.
conspiracy theory is gonna come up with.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for watching Citizen Pete. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, click that little subscribe button, maybe the like button, and hey, maybe just leave a comment. I want to know what you're thinking. What do you think about all the politics, the news, and all the stuff that's going on in our country?